Hi, everyone. We're here to interview Kelly Mahler today and talk to you about why sensory processing is so important for us to be aware of and some tips that you can do for your children while you're at home. I'm Elizabeth Sauter. I'm a speech and language pathologist with Make Social Learning Stick. And this is Rebecca Brandstetter. She is a school psychologist and developer of the Thriving School Psychologist Collaborative, and also my co-developer in Make It Stick Parenting. Kelly Mahler is an occupational therapist, and she's actually a really good friend of mine too. We met actually at a conference many years ago, and I've been following her work, and she's contributed to my second edition of my book, and I'm just a huge fan and really happy to have her here with you today. A little bit more of a fancy bio of Kelly is that she is an adjunct faculty member at the Department of Occupational Therapy at Elizabethtown College in Pennsylvania. She's actively involved in several research projects pertaining to interoception and has developed a lot of curriculum and resources. This is her book, Interoception, the 8 Sensory System, and she'll be talking a little bit about that, and her curriculum, the interoception curriculum. Kelly is an international speaker and presents frequently on topics related to her 7 books that she has authored. So I was really happy that you were able to jump on with us during this time where we're spending a lot of time with our children. Many of us have children with challenges with sensory processing, and maybe some of us don't even know what that term means. So can you break that down for us and explain what sensory processing is?
Sensory processing is just a really fancy term that refers to our ability, or our senses' ability, to take in information from the outside world. So we have 5 external senses, or outside senses, and these are the senses that we learned about in preschool or kindergarten: smell, sound, sight, touch, and taste. And these outside senses are pulling in information, as the name implies, from the outside of our bodies. And that information comes in and is processed in the brain. And our brain helps us to respond to all of this incoming sensory information. So if someone is shouting your name from across the room, your ears pull in that information, your brain processes it, and you might respond by looking at that person. We also have 3 internal senses pulling in information from the inside of our bodies. So we have our sense of vestibular, which is our sense of movement and balance. We have proprioception, which is our sense of our body position in space. And also we have interoception, which is our sense of how our body feels. And so all of these 8 senses are working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, helping us to navigate our environment. And what it's really important to know as a parent is that we all have different sensory preferences, and we all have different sensory likes and dislikes, and things that can be considered, quite frankly, aversive to some of us. So when we are working very closely at home with our children, we really need to know each of our child's sensory preferences in order to be able to navigate this situation successfully.
Can I ask a follow-up around that? So I know that a lot of families are trying to help their students right now manage a brave new world of unknown, meaning like homeschooling, and kids are at home and they feel like it's Saturday, and so it's really challenging sometimes to get them to maybe do the work that the teacher has sent, or it's hard for parents to figure out like why their kids are bouncing off the walls and what to do, or why their kids are withdrawn, right? So I'm wondering how sensory processing, those outside and inside senses, might relate to helping your kids keep calm and structure on. And we did a little post on that before. We can post the link before if you need a refresher. But how can we understand sensory processing as it relates to helping our kids sort of self-regulate in this really dysregulating time?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And if we can be aware of our child's preferences and also their dislikes, we can then be a sensory detective and structure the environment to help them thrive and be successful. So if our child is having a really hard time, and I'm going through this right now with 2 kids of my own, and they're so distracted, they're trying to get their homework done or their schoolwork done, and it is a very distracting time. And so knowing what is distracting to each of my children is really important, so that I can structure their environment to help them be most attentive to their work. So I know my oldest child, she is distracted by any sound in the environment. So she's not someone that can do work sitting next to me at a desk. She needs to be in a quiet space on her own with no noise in the background so that she can focus on her work. So I really had to be a sensory detective and trying to structure the environment in the best way I can. It's not perfect, to help promote her learning at home.
And how about movement? Okay. Because, you know, we're all grappling with, you know, how much should I have them, you know, this is, you know, business as usual. We're going to be doing our work just like you would at school. And, you know, this is an unusual time in which we're probably having a little bit more leeway with students, but with our kids at home. Can you kind of explain the importance of, you know, building in movement and how that helps kids self-regulate?
Yeah, movement is really important. We know from lots of research that the brain needs movement to learn. And it can be incredibly tempting, I am at fault for this, to push my kids through and get all their work done so we can be done for the day. But scheduling in those proactive movement breaks is so important. And also, like I said, be proactive. Don't wait until they're so antsy that they're like past the point of return. We want to make sure that we're building in those proactive movement breaks ahead of time. So just chunking their daily schedule into small sections, have them do a little bit of their math, then give them a 20-minute, 30-minute movement break, and then come back and do their next subject, and then another movement break will definitely help them be more successful with their work many times, and also kind of keep a more successful emotional experience for all of us.
Kelly, in my book that we were talked about when we were thinking about what you were going to contribute, you had called them like feel-good breaks, like letting off some steam throughout the day and not waiting until they get into like a heightened state of alertness. You know, you talked about some of our kids might be seeking more stimulation, and some kids might be avoiding. And so thinking about what their needs are once you can be aware of their preferences, and doing those feel-good breaks, like to let off some steam.
Absolutely. And what I've done with my children is they've made a list of all their different feel-good activities, things that they enjoy doing. And then when we're scheduling in these proactive breaks, they get to pick from their list what they want to do during each of their break time. And I was talking about my oldest daughter. Her breaks tend to be more quieter things. She might be up in her room reading, but she's still getting up and moving away from the learning environment, where my other daughter is completely the opposite. And we're outside playing tetherball and bouncing balls and doing jump rope because she needs lots of input to come back and be regulated. So again, it comes back to being that sensory detective and really acknowledging and supporting your child's sensory needs.
Individual child by individual child, for sure.
Yeah.
And we have in the blog that Rebecca mentioned, there's a schedule so that if your children do really want to be on a schedule, making sure you have those sensory feel-good breaks, and they're not getting recess now, or maybe group activities. So thinking about how that can be implemented as well. And I wanted to, so you can get that in our link, and also Kelly's work as well, for sure. She has a whole curriculum on teaching this if you need more with your children. I did want to mention, so for the inside sensory processing that you mentioned, especially for interoception, but just awareness in general, can you talk a little bit about how mindfulness is helpful with that?
Yeah, well, actually, mindfulness is the only evidence-based intervention or strategy right now for improving interoception. So interoception is our sense of how our body feels. And you have little receptors located throughout the inside of your body that is continually pulling in information about how your body feels. So you have receptors like in your heart, your lungs, your stomach, your bladder, your muscles, your skin, even the whites of your eyeballs, pulling in information about how all of these body parts are feeling. And this information is sent to the brain, just like all of the other senses. And our brain uses this information to figure out exactly what emotion we're experiencing. So if your stomach, the sensors in your stomach are saying, oh, it's growling, then your brain uses that as a clue, like, oh, I'm feeling hungry. Or if your receptors are saying, oh, my muscles are tight, my skin is hot, and my brain is stuck feeling, then maybe the brain uses those clues as you're starting to feel frustrated. And so that is what interoception is in a nutshell. It has this nice body emotion connection. So interoception is what helps us to be clearly aware of how we're feeling and what our emotion experience is. So then in turn that can allow us to help us manage our emotions the most effectively. So when it comes back to mindfulness, mindfulness is all really about paying attention in the present moment. So in regards to interoception, it's paying attention to your body in the present moment and how your body is feeling. And right now our culture is not very good at paying attention in the present moment in general, especially to our bodies. And many times we go through life and kind of ignore our body needs, right? So it's really important to be and help our children become mindfully aware of how their body is feeling in the present moment. And that can go far in helping bridge and build their social emotional learning skills.
Okay. So if I could recap in like layman's terms, essentially like it's your body's giving you clues about how you feel, right?
Yeah.
So if your kids, sitting with their work that they're supposed to be doing for their teacher and you see their body tensed up, maybe helping them like noticing that and saying, how that's a clue how you might be feeling right now. I think that, we've talked a lot about mindfulness, and we do have in that tool we mentioned a mindfulness menu and a calming menu. And I think what you said earlier is so critical, Kelly, which is to know each individual child. Many of us have more than one child. And I actually, when I did this activity about the calming strategies and the breaks that they would like, I was really surprised. The ones that they circled as the ones that were important to them, I did not see that coming. And, like you said, you have to be aware of how much sensory input do they like, or they need like a sensory break. So I really want to thank you for that nugget of wisdom. Elizabeth, did you have any final thoughts on how parents can support kids at home, especially when it relates to sensory processing and emotional self-regulation?
I want to just recap what Kelly is saying in general, that we just have to be aware. Oftentimes we see our kids having overwhelming feelings and in reaction to those feelings. And if we can go dive a little deeper, this is more of a bottom-up approach to helping children with social emotional learning. And Kelly has just done a lot of groundbreaking work in this area. And it really relates back to being able to train the brain, understand, through mindfulness, to be able to have that sensory awareness. And her curriculum and work has been inspirational. In when we met, I was, already doing the mindfulness piece and knew about sensory processing, but just following her work in terms of interoception and self-regulation has been a game changer for many of the clients that I support and my own children and myself. So I think that just, recapping is making sure that we are taking those sensory breaks and definitely understanding your child's sensory preferences, whether they're seeking more and maybe wanting more input, spinning, jumping, whatever it might be, right, Kelly? Or if they're avoiding. And if that's the case, then we want to modify the environment and really be sensitive to their overwhelm in these different areas. But there's so much more, and I want you to explain. I already showed her curriculum, and she's got an online course and all of her books. But Kelly, can you just recap what our community can grasp to find more information through you?
Yeah, sure. I have a website with lots of free resources. It's www.kelly-mahler.com, and I think you have it below. So yes, lots of free resources on there. We also have a very active Facebook group. If you search interoception, the 8th sensory system, we have over 10,000 members there. And so you can post any questions that you might have, and there's lots of people answering on a daily basis.
I do want to mention too that Kelly is very active in, I mentioned already in her bio, but just very active in research and continuously bringing evidence base to this work, which is so helpful because us parents know it's real, and we need the rest of the world to understand how profound this is and how debilitating it can be, and that there is a lot that can be done. So thank you for that work and continuously sharing your work with us and and all that you're doing. And thank you for being part of the Make Social and Emotional Learning STIC community and sharing your time with us today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.